The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Oh, my goodness. 72 degrees today. Whew. Yeah. Get out while you can because it's supposed to rain this weekend. Temperatures are supposed to drop. By the time we get to the second half, for sure, of the Baltimore game on Sunday, it's going to be rainy. But that may favor the Ravens. Who knows? It may slow down Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey and those guys. Of course, Lamar Jackson relies a lot on running the ball, and the Ravens' offense is more explosive than probably gets credit for. So, I don't know what it's going to mean in terms of the game, but I'm looking forward to that and looking forward to the NFC Championship game on Sunday. Now, I wonder how this would affect Washington if the Lions win. Now, the way things are set up now, and they've had to change things a lot over the years. I remember 30 years ago when they hired Norv Turner, they had to wait until after the Cowboys were out of the Super Bowl. You couldn't interview coaches who were still involved in a season. And the Cowboys at that time, closing in on their second Super Bowl championship, Norv Turner was not available to talk to him, to talk to the team. And I remember this at the old station. We had Norv on the air, and we asked him, do you want the Washington job? He said, yeah. So the problem was he couldn't tell that to Jack Kent Cooke, who was doing the hiring at the time. So they've set up different ways of doing things now and different deadlines and when you can talk to coaches by Zoom, when you can interview them in person. And I believe, win or lose, Washington will be able to talk to Ben Johnson on Monday. We'll be able to interview him in person. I would imagine that whoever's involved in this with Josh Harris, he's got a group of advisors on this. They would all fly out to Detroit and meet with him there. But as far as bringing him in, I guess they couldn't really do that until after the Super Bowl because he would be tied up with that. Now, the Lions are 7-point underdogs for this game, for whatever that means. And I guess if you're a diehard Washington fan, you root for San Francisco because of that, so you can get things rolling. But the reality of what's going on in the coaching business right now is these jobs are filling up quickly. There's only 2 jobs left, one in Seattle and one here. And it looks like Bill Belichick is going to be left out in the cold. Raheem Morris, the Rams defensive coordinator, he was here, actually, and was in Atlanta before, was the interim coach there for a little bit. He goes back as the head coach, so that's filled. Belichick's not getting that. It's not going to happen in Seattle because they just ran out Pete Carroll, who's 72 years old, and Belichick is going to be 72. Yes, Belichick has more Super Bowl championships than Carroll, but I don't see that happening. So it looks like, unless this Mike Florio wild rumor is true, Florio likes to throw a lot of things against the wall, and every once in a while something sticks, and he goes, see, I had that. But he's now saying, don't rule out the possibility that win or lose the Super Bowl, that Andy Reid leaves the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Reid is 65. He's younger than Belichick. But he said, don't rule that out, and that Belichick takes over Kansas City. In a lot of ways, that makes sense because Belichick wants to go to a team that's ready to win, a team that has a quarterback. He's proven that when he has a quarterback, he wins with Tom Brady. So maybe from the Chiefs' standpoint, that makes sense, too, that you got a team that's still good and ready to win, and you have a coach who could come in and perhaps win another Super Bowl or maybe even 2 with them. Who knows? So that will be one to keep an eye on. It just would seem to be an odd move to have a coach retire at 65 and his replacement come in at the age of 72. And then Mike Vrabel, I guess unless Vrabel gets the Seattle job, he's out too. And the coaching tree of Bill Belichick, that's his most successful branch. That's guy I did a really good job in Tennessee, and if the reports are true, it seems Meshuggah. But when Vrabel went back for this Ring of Honor ceremony as a great player with the Patriots and later a coach, he talked about how much it meant to be a Patriot, even at that time as he was still the coach of the Tennessee Titans, and that apparently ruffled some feathers, so he's now out. And then even if you wanted to, and even if, Belichick was so desperate that he'd work for David Tepper, that job is now filled with Buccaneers defensive coordinator David Canales, who I'd never even heard of until yesterday. He's been around for a long time, but, I would not know him if he walked into a room. Now, the thing about working for Tepper is you get a mulligan on that. It's kind of like coming here or going to the Raiders under Al Davis. If it doesn't work out for him, and he's a young enough guy, Dave Canales, he goes someplace else because you go, oh, well, that's Carolina, that's Tepper, that's the guy that throws the drink out the window at the angry fan, and, you kind of discount that. So you might not think much of it if it doesn't work out for him there. But Bill Belichick, who does want that Don Shula record, it's pretty clear that he wants that, and that's another, I think, 15 wins, so it's another at least 2 seasons before you get that. Yeah, he may have to sit out a year, and at 72, going on 73, is anybody interested in hiring him a year from now? Really stunning. And the other end of this is that the Rooney Rule may finally be working. We got 4 African-American coaches that were hired this year. One of them is not named Eric Bieniemy, which is also somewhat of a surprise because as the coaching cycle has gone on the last few years, the narrative has been, poor Eric Bieniemy, he can't get hired. He's had 17 interviews, and look at the great job he's done with the Kansas City Chiefs, and nobody's going to hire him as a head coach. He may have damaged himself by coming here. He came here because he was going to be a play caller and because he got the title of assistant head coach. And Ron Rivera really may have damaged him with those comments that he made in training camp where he said players were coming to him and complaining about how tough Bieniemy was. If you look at the way coaching is done now, the old school hard-ass stuff is not working. Dan Campbell is seen as a throwback. But if you watch like Hard Knocks 2 years ago from the Lions and the things that he says at his news conferences, yeah, he's preaching grit. But he's saying to his players, hey, I'm right there with you. I got your back. I love you, and you don't really get that sense from Bieniemy. So this may have ended his chances to get a head coaching job. It's not like, 10 years ago we had no African-American coaches hired, and we had 4 of them this year. And I don't think Eric Bieniemy even got an interview. I don't think anybody even talked to him about that. So, that's it's a stunning turn of events that you have Bill Belichick leaving New England at the end of the year. And aside from, it looks like a couple of interviews with Atlanta, that was it in terms of interest. And that didn't work out. And one of the things that also is involved in this move by the Falcons is that Raheem Morris does not talk to Rich McKay, who's been the longtime general manager of the team. He reports directly to Arthur Blank, the owner. So I'm sure that must have been something that was a sticking point between Belichick and Blank. Like, Belichick wanted to be his own island, which he had earned in New England. Hadn't earned that yet in Atlanta, and Blank didn't want him coming in and having this, autonomy that he had in New England and producing seasons like he has the last few years with the Patriots. Shoo, there we go. We'll see what happens on Monday. But to me, from the looks of things now, it appears that Ben Johnson knows that Washington wants him. That's the place he wants to be. And I mean, it's possible he's had other offers to go other places, but also there's been a delay in how much interviewing you can do with him because of his involvement in the NFC Championship game. So I would think that if the Lions lose, there's a pretty good chance we'll have a news conference next week introducing Ben Johnson as the new coach of the Commanders. Speaking of new coaches, at least interim coach, the Washington Wizards will have one for the rest of this miserable season, which has reached a record of 7-37 with last night's 15-point loss to the Utah Jazz. We had this story just before we came on the air yesterday. This broke in the 8 o'clock hour that Wes Unseld Jr. was being pushed to the front office. They don't have a job for him yet, but he's under contract through the end of next season. So they said to him, take some time off, think about what you want to do with the organization, but we're going to move on here. And they have promoted his top assistant, Brian Keefe, to head coach. So far, pretty much the same. It's just pretty much how they've been playing under Wes Unseld Jr. Not very well, not very competitively. Defensively, I guess under their average, giving up about their average, little less than their average, about 125 a game. They gave up 123 last night to Utah. But in announcing this move yesterday, Michael Winger, who's the president of the team, explained why you would do this now. Because, look, it's not like you're going anywhere. It's not like you're going to have a second-half turnaround under Brian Keefe. And even if you do, you're still not going to make the playoffs, and you're going to hurt your ping pong ball chances for the NBA lottery. So a lot of us wondered, well, why do you do this now? Why with a team that's already sunk for the season, would you make a coaching change at this point? Here's Winger.
There was no sense of urgency right now. Nothing really occurred. Will and I met with Wes often, and we talk basketball a lot. We talk about the team. We talk about the competitiveness of the team, player accountability, joy, our principles. And it sort of became clearer that there was just this sustained something less than our most competitive selves. And you just kept feeling it and seeing it. And Wes did too. I mean, he saw it, he knew it, he felt it, and he gave it everything he had. The team that he inherited from us this season is significantly different than the teams he had the last couple of years. The job he took 2 years ago is different than the one he had this year. And, I mean, he left it all out there, in my opinion. And the timing, it just didn't register. I don't want to say it didn't register. It was not part of the calculus of where we were in the season, the number of games remaining, back-to-back. It was just, we had a conversation last night, which we do often, and it was just one of those where it's like, man, how are we going to get better? How are we going to sort of ratchet up the dial on competitiveness? And we came to the conclusion that the fellas just need to hear a new voice. And that was irrespective of the timing.
New voice, getting the same kind of sound, though. I mean, a 15-point loss at home, a lackluster performance again. They've got, it's ironic this happens at this time, but they've got a noon tip-off tomorrow at Detroit. That's the only team in the league that's worse than they are. They got 5 wins, and one of them was against the Wizards a couple of weeks ago here in D.C. on Martin Luther King's birthday. He mentioned Will being Will Dawkins, the general manager of the team. Winger is the president, so they got that structure. Winger, president, Will Dawkins is the general manager. He said specifically, this is Dawkins talking specifically, we know our energy wasn't always there. We know our competitiveness was not always there, and defensively there were nights that were unacceptable. How about all the nights? How about, 7 and 37, so the 43 nights were mostly unacceptable. I guess the 7 that you managed to win. He says, those are things that we want to continue to work on, and we think that a fresh voice right here, right now is what we need. We'll see. It's not really a fresh voice because he's been a part of this coaching staff. So they've been listening or not listening to these guys for the last whatever. I guess Keefe has been here since Unseld got here, so the last 2.5 years. But Keefe, with a straight face, said this. This is Brian Keefe talking. Defense has been our calling card. He said this in the pregame. We have to see improvement on that. That is going to be my first step, and I've always thought that. Basic tenets of the NBA. I like unselfish basketball. I like spacing. I like making the simple play, but our focus right now is for us to see growth defensively. I've been listening to that from coaches coming and going here for 30 years. Come on. It's terrible. They got a bad team. They don't play defense, and everybody knows this is a tank season. But, okay. This is what they want to do. Is it going to make much of a difference? No, not really. Is it going to add to payroll? No, not really, because they're going to fire Unseld at the end of the year anyway, and they're going to have to pay his contract off, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But this was the one, I think, most important thing that Winger said last night, and that is it's not the record. It's the way we got to that record. Again, Michael Winger, president of the Wizards.
We can tolerate losing a game in which we were competitive for 48 minutes. we can tolerate losing a basketball game where we see the team improving as a collective. In the absence of 48 minutes of competitiveness, in the absence of collective team basketball progress over the course of time, irrespective of the individual improvement, we have an issue to address. And that's sort of how that conversation unfolded.
Yeah, the issue is you stink. Team stinks. You knew you were going to stink when you traded Bradley Beal. This was about, they refused to use the word rebuild, but it is. It's getting as many ping pong balls as you can get. And, are you the development of players? Now, Koulibaly looks like a really good player, so you want to continue to develop him. I don't think Kyle Kuzma or Jordan Poole are going to be here when this team gets to be good. I think at some point those two guys are going to be traded. But as terms of who else you're developing, Advia, pretty good role player. They got some pieces who are decent players, but it's a bad team. It's just a terrible, terrible team. And I guess it was so bad under Wes Unseld that even with this terrible team, it was more terrible than they thought. So they're making this move at this time. All right, lots of luck. I guess it comes off as a huge matchup, right? They were kind of joking. Half joking, maybe they were serious about this, that at the end of the bowl season in college football, that next year you would have a bowl game featuring the two worst teams in college basketball. Well, now you've got the two worst teams in the NBA with a high noon tip-off tomorrow on the Monumental Sports Network as Washington plays at Detroit. Between the two teams, 12 wins, more than halfway through the season. Oy vey's mir. Coming up, it was 4 years ago today that Kobe Bryant and his daughter and others died in that horrible helicopter crash as they were on their way to a basketball game. And it's something that still reverberates today. And the life of Kobe Bryant is remembered all the time, but particularly on a day like this. And we'll look back on it as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We got the Tony Show at 11 o'clock. Mike Callow is in for him today. We got a Ravens preview. Yeah, this is as big a preview as we've had, right? They're going into the AFC Championship game, and at 10:30 we'll talk to Jonas Schaefer of the Baltimore Banner. We'll also hear from John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson, Roquan Smith, who's always good at sound bites, so we'll get that. But first, if you want to win a trip to Las Vegas during the weekend of the big game, here's how you enter for your chance to win a trip for two to Vegas, which includes airfare, a two-night stay at the Fontainebleau Las Vegas with $150 credit, 2 tickets to the Fontainebleau Las Vegas big game viewing party at the Blue Live Theater. All you have to do is text the word weekend. That's weekend to 95819. That's weekend to 95819. Standard messaging and data rates may apply. Contest rules at sportscapitaldc.com/contests. So it was 4 years ago today. Remember, it was a Sunday afternoon, and it was the Sunday before the Super Bowl. So this was after the conference championships and before we went into the Super Bowl. And they were still at that time playing the Pro Bowl in Orlando. Fortunately, they've done away with that. But that was on, and I was sort of watching that and looking at some things and checking my phone. And on my phone, I see there's a report from TMZ that Kobe Bryant was killed in a helicopter crash. And it's Twitter, it's TMZ, and you go, I hope that's just a wild rumor. God almighty, really? Kobe Bryant killed in a helicopter crash. And, information travels quickly now. And there were some erroneous reports, by the way. There was an ABC News reporter who got up and said, we believe that Kobe Bryant and his entire family were killed. This doesn't take away from the tragedy, but it was only one of his children who was killed, 13-year-old Gianna, who was called Gigi. She was one of the star players on the team that Kobe was coaching. John Altobelli, who was a baseball coach, related to, I think he was related to Joe Altobelli, who managed the Orioles to World Series championship. His wife, Carrie, daughter, Alyssa, who was a player, Peyton Chester, her mother, Sarah, basketball coach, Christina Mauser, and the pilot, Ara Zaboyan. And apparently what happened is he entered low cloud cover lost his sense of orientation, and the plane crashed and killed everybody aboard. It was just a horrible, horrible thing, and you're checking your phone, you're seeing the reports, you're hoping something's not true, and then it becomes clear that it actually did happen, and this was Michael Eaves breaking in on the Pro Bowl coverage on ESPN.
Five-time NBA champion, former league MVP Kobe Bryant died earlier this afternoon in Los Angeles in a helicopter crash. News reports are just coming in among multiple victims. Kobe Bryant on that helicopter.
Yeah, and so were the others who were killed. It was just such a sad day. And then they go back to the Pro Bowl, and you know how information travels now. You know, players understand what's going on. I guess there were cell phones on the sidelines. If not, the word was traveling pretty quickly that Kobe and his daughter and 7 other people, including the pilot, were killed in this. And Kobe had been using a helicopter much like a lot of people use a car. You know, he went from place to place. He was a man doing a lot of things in retirement. He'd had a 20-year unbelievable career. He won 5 championships. His last game in the NBA, he had 60 points. He may not have been Michael Jordan or LeBron James, but he was in the conversation as one of the greats of all time. And like many of the greats, spent his entire career with one team. Jordan didn't do that. LeBron certainly hasn't done that. But he was in many ways the Los Angeles Lakers, certainly of the post years with that they had with Chamberlain and Jerry West and that group. They were and Magic, of course, the Magic Johnson years with Kareem. So he was the last generation of great Laker teams with Shaq, who was at that point. Again, he may have been out of the NBA at that point. So he was out of the NBA. So was Kobe. But this was a couple days later. They had a memorial service at the Staples Center. And among those who spoke about Kobe was Michael Jordan, who got up and had tears in his eyes. You saw while he was speaking, tears streaming down his face as he talked about his friend.
In the game of basketball, in life, as a parent, Kobe left nothing in the tank. He left it all on the floor. Maybe it surprised people that Kobe and I were very close friends, but we were very close friends. Kobe was my dear friend. He was like a little brother. Everyone always wanted to talk about the comparisons between he and I. I just wanted to talk about Kobe. You know, all of us have brothers and sisters, little brothers, little sisters who, for whatever reason, always tend to get in your stuff, your closet, your shoes, everything. It was a nuisance, if I can say that word. But that nuisance turned into love over a period of time, just because the admiration that they had for you as big brothers or big sisters. The questions, the wanting to know every little detail about life that they were about to embark on. He used to call me, text me, 11:30, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Talking about post-up moves, footwork, and sometimes the triangle. At first, it was an aggravation. But then it turned into a certain passion. This kid had passion like you would never know.
Yeah, that was Michael Jordan just a couple of days after Kobe's death. There were some horrible elements of this. There were some police officers who had pictures of the scene, the grisly photos, and were seen showing them around. And Kobe's widow, Vanessa, went to court and won a $29 million judgment against the L.A. Police Department because of that. I mean, just horrible, horrible things. But just the feeling in the country of everybody who went through that as a fan, or just thinking about life in general. Never mind that this was one of the great basketball players of all time. This was a man in prime of life. He's 41, 42 years old, and his 13-year-old daughter snuffed out in an instant. And he was, he's a man in a hurry. It would have taken 2 hours to drive to where they were going to this basketball tournament. And so he had the money, and he had the ability to do that. And he said, well, let's just take a helicopter. And he took some teammates and their parents, and they all died as well. It was just a horrible, horrible thing. And it remains that way to this day. I mean, there's no looking back on this and saying, well, there was this silver lining. No, there was nothing like that. And I remember that Tony and Mike doing PTI, or wherever the Super Bowl was that year, I forget where it was, but they were there at the site, and instead of doing their usual PTI show, they just talked about Kobe Bryant for basically the entire half hour and the effect that he had on people. And he was one of those people who was on his way to transcending what he did as a basketball player. He had already won an Academy Award for his film work. His focus in sports was his daughter, and she was already talking at the age of 13 about playing at UConn, and then going to the WNBA and becoming what her father was in men's basketball. She would become that in women's basketball, and given the drive that Kobe had and it seemingly passed on to her, there was no doubt about that. And just to see the family grieving about this, and the mother who in an instant lost her husband and a daughter, it's unimaginable tragedy. And it was only 4 years ago. In some ways it seems longer ago, and the way time passes with other things, it seems like it was yesterday. But do really remember that very well, and remember the way that the news spread on that Sunday afternoon, the misreporting that came out of it that angered me and other people, and then to see that what TMZ had reported was actually true. Just a horrible, horrible tragedy. All right, enough of that. We're going to segue into the Ravens and their championship game coming up on Sunday. Jonas Shaffer, the Baltimore Banner, will join us at 10:30. Also, Kalen Deboar, who's the new coach at Alabama, was on with Dan Patrick yesterday. And I'm going to play some of the interview to point out where we are in this game now. That in the early January, in the early days of January, you better get your feet on the ground and better get your arms around your program, or it's going to blow up quickly. It's a whole new world in college football, and we'll dissect what DeBoer said to give you a picture of what that's like. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. All right, we're rolling till 11 o'clock today. Mike Callow's in for Tony, and we will talk at 10:30 about the Ravens and their big playoff game this weekend at home. It's the first AFC championship game in Baltimore since 1971. Wow. Johnny Unitas quarterbacked the Colts against the Oakland Raiders. They won that game. They went to the Super Bowl. They played the Cowboys. Johnny Unitas actually got hurt in that game, broke his ribs. And Earl Morrall came in, and they got a field goal from Jim O'Brien at the gun to win the Super Bowl. And Dallas, very frustrated, came back next year and beat the hell out of the Dolphins for their first Super Bowl championship. But that's ancient history. This is now, and this is great excitement for the Ravens. And we'll play some of the comments from the news conferences this week, including John Harbaugh with a Hoosiers reference. Now, it's funny to make that reference because they're not the tiny little school in Hickory. They're the favorites. They've had the top seed in the AFC, and top to bottom, offense, defense, and the best kicker ever. To me, I mean, the only team that can beat the Ravens, it seems, is the Ravens. And if they get to the Super Bowl, well, they've already clobbered San Francisco, and San Francisco is a 7-point favorite against Detroit on Sunday evening. So we've seen this before. We've seen heavy favorites go into games like this and lose, and you got a heavy favorite playing against a team that's
been there, done that. Kansas City Chiefs are used to playing at this time of year. I'm going to get to more on this, on the game and the two games coming up. I did want to start this hour pretty much like I started the last one, a little more detail on the coaching situation. Who would have thought that when Bill Belichick parted ways with New England, that he would have had only 2 interviews, and it's with one team that has filled that vacancy? Raheem Morris is going to be the coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And reports were that, it looked like this is the guy that Arthur Blank wants. They had an interview on the yacht. There were parameters that Belichick wanted that Blank was probably going to go for. No, didn't happen. And so even if Belichick now then wanted to go to the Panthers, that job is filled. And they have filled it with Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator Dave Canales. So they've got their young guy who, will probably get fired a year or two in by David Tepper, who rolls through coaches, but it won't hurt him in terms of how he's perceived around the league because you get a mulligan when you go there. That's the new Washington. That's the way it used to be here. I was just thinking with Belichick that if Dan Snyder was still owning the team, he would have wanted Belichick. That would have been something he wanted. Well, in the first go-round, Belichick would have gone, no, I don't want that. But would he have been desperate enough? Because I don't think Tepper offered him a job. I don't think that was possible. But would he have been desperate enough to go work for Dan Snyder, who could have survived? The thing that we sometimes forget with everything that went on and how we got to this point, if Snyder had not leaked those Bruce Allen emails, he'd still own the team. That's what sunk him. And the reason he leaked those emails is because he knew that football, the NFL, wanted to get Gruden out of the NFL. They hated Gruden, so they wanted him out. So he leaked this to curry favor with the commissioner. And it wound up, blowing up in his face. I mean, nobody was more of a schlemiel than he was. And a schlemiel, by the way, is someone who spills hot soup on himself. And he did that. And that was it. And he's out. But if he were still here, he would have pursued Belichick. And would Belichick, in his desire to get past Don Shula's record, said, okay, I'll go work for you. And what would have happened is he would have gone to Dan Snyder, much like Marty Schottenheimer, and he would have said, here are the rules. Here's how it's got to work. You got to stay completely out of my business. Snyder would have said yes, and then he would have started meddling. And how that would have been handled, who knows. But with the second pick of the draft, Belichick probably would have done that, and he probably would have come here. And now it's quite possible that he's going to spend a year out of football and maybe not get back in because Seattle's not hiring. 2 openings, here and Seattle. Seattle just fired a coach who's 72 years old in Pete Carroll. They're not hiring another one who's about to turn 72. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So now we have the game of musical chairs with only 2 chairs left. Don't know where Seattle is going to go. And I would assume that once we get to Monday that Ben Johnson is going to use one against the other. I don't know if Seattle's interested in Ben Johnson, but if they are, maybe he can look at what he wants. I think this is more attractive here. I really do. I mean, you've got cap room. You got the second pick of the draft. You've got new ownership and the ownership in Seattle is not great. It's, Paul Allen passed away. He never married. So the team is owned by his sister. And the only thing his sister is waiting for, as I understand it, there's some kind of bizarre tax situation in the state of Washington that makes it more attractive for her to keep the team until 2025. So she's going to have it for another couple of years. And I don't know what they're going to do in terms of a coach, but they're not going to hire Bill Belichick, and I don't think they're going to hire him here. Now, as far as what happened with the Rooney Rule, it seems to have worked this year. We have 4 new coaches who are African Americans, including Raheem Morris, who got the job the other day, Gerard Mayo in New England. And there is something that they call the NFL's Accelerator Program, which puts promising front office and head coaching candidates in a room with the owners if there's a job on the line. And you can't, close the book and say, okay, this is now it's been successful. It works perfectly well. We have nothing to worry about. We've had, backsliding in this in years past, like 2009, 3 coaches of color were hired. A year later, there were none. 2011, 1 Hispanic, 2 black coaches were hired. A year later, 1 coach of color was hired. 2013, none. I know that's gone back 10 years, over 10 years. But, is it possible that this is finally working after all this time? After, 2 years ago when we had, 1 black coach who was hired, and that was Lovie Smith, I think, or maybe it was last year. Lovie Smith was fired, and D'Amico Ryans got his job, and we saw what D'Amico Ryans was able to do with a rookie quarterback. Now, as far as Eric Bieniemy, I guess the door is closed on him. This was supposed to be the year that was going to boost him. It may have hurt him. What Ron Rivera said in training camp about the players coming to him and complaining about how tough he was, that may be something that other owners are looking at and saying, oh, man, we don't want this crazy hard ass coming in here and alienating the players. You can say Dan Campbell's an old school tough guy, but he loves his players. He's not ripping his players. He's telling them how great they are. Bieniemy apparently wasn't doing that on the practice field, and some of them got tired of it. And we heard a couple of comments in the locker clean out about hey, it's not for everybody. It's a new style of coaching, but the style of coaching on the field wasn't effective either. He did it with a quarterback who was essentially a rookie. That's true, and he threw the ball all the time, but didn't work out, did it? And you think about where Eric Bieniemy was a year ago. Like, okay, this is the final step to get myself noticed to become a head coach. And it probably hurt him more than helped him. I think the thing that he has to do right now, if he truly, really wants to be a head coach, I think he's got to take a college job. This is what happened with Bill Walsh many years ago. He was expected to replace Paul Brown, who was the founder of the Cincinnati Bengals. And Brown was the head coach for a long time, and his offensive coordinator was Bill Walsh, and Bill Walsh did a great job with an expansion team. He developed quarterbacks very well. He developed that West Coast offense with Virgil Carter, who couldn't throw it as far as I can. It was a perfect offense for that quarterback, and he thought, Walsh did, that when Paul Brown retired, he'd get the job. He didn't. Went to a guy named Tiger Johnson. So Walsh said, the hell with this, and he went to Stanford. Had a success there, and recruited John Elway and left before Elway was a freshman, but got him in there, and then went to the San Francisco 49ers, and the rest is history. I think that's something that Bieniemy probably has to do. All right, the college game. Kalen Deboar was on yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show, and this is the state of college football right now. Used to be that a school would fire a coach, and the new guy would come in, and he'd blast all the players. He'd say, well, the reason I'm here is because the last guy couldn't do it. And the players were kind of stuck whether they liked him or not, because if you wanted to transfer, you had to sit out a year. Well, now you can go immediately. And I remember playing a few weeks ago, we had the Lou Holtz interview. Yeah, Lou Holtz interview with Joe Buck, and he talked about when he took over at Notre Dame after they got rid of a coach who was clearly in over his head, and he came in and he goes, look, I know I'm not your first choice, but I'm all you got. Well, you can't come in and do that anymore because guys can leave immediately. So here's Kalen Deboar, who played for the national championship, and almost within minutes of that, moved to become the coach of Alabama when Nick Saban retired. Saban waited till Wednesday or something. His team lost, and then he waited until the Wednesday after the national championship and said, I'm done. And so Alabama had to work quickly. And here's DeBoer. He's only a couple of days after losing the national championship game. He's got to work on recruiting at Washington. Nope. Nick Saban retired. They want you. Boom, got to get there because you got to recruit the roster that's there. This is DeBoer on that yesterday with Dan Patrick.
The number one thing that you had to do as soon as you hit ground in Tuscaloosa was what?
Well, meeting with the team and really trying to get in front of them and the craziness of college athletics and in particular the portal and just trying to make sure that they got a feel for who I was, in the moment. As soon as I landed, got in front of them. But the 4 days or so, trying to meet with them individually in groups. You're trying to build a staff at the same time and showing them the vision and feeling the personalities of those that will be coming into the program to coach them. So that balance right there, kept me busy for those 4 or 5 days. And now it's kind of reaching out and getting to the recruiting, that's been done, whether it's guys that have signed and just trying to continue to impress on them their importance in our program. And I'm excited to have them joining us. And, of course, the classes in the future, the 25s, the 26s, and so forth.
Well, also, were you re-recruiting some of your players who were going to go in the portal or at least talking about going into the portal?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a big part of it. I think that's probably some of the best recruiting our coaches have done so far is really recruiting our own roster. And, it's crazy to say that, but, I think that's the case no matter what, but I think it's even at another level now, just with everything. So I'm really proud of the way our guys, when I say our guys, our team have been receptive and embraced our coaching staff and myself. I think we've done a great job of retaining the core, the nucleus of who's in this program. There's so many great players, and they want this place to be great. And, certainly caught them by surprise. And, it hits you pretty hard when, Coach Saban retired. And that's a big piece of why they came here. But they also came here to wear those Alabama colors. And, they've really, again, been receptive to myself and holding it together and wanting to carry on the legacy of this great place.
Kalen Deboar's won. He's won wherever he's been. But coming to Alabama, you don't only have to win. You have to win big. You have to be playing for national championships. The bar is set as high as it is. And this was kind of surprising in the conversation, that with all Nick Saban has done in his 17 years at Alabama, and he is staying on in an advisory role, a lot of that's fundraising and things like that, but he's going to have an office at the complex, but he's not going to have his old office. Kalen Deboar got the Nick Saban office, leading Dan Patrick to ask this question.
Did you have that moment where you sat there in his chair, at his desk, in his office, by yourself, and just said to yourself, I'm the head coach at Alabama?
Yeah, it's certainly a special place, and Coach Saban's made it that way, and, I think that piece of it was intriguing and exciting to me when going through this process of looking to being the head coach. And, he's made it an amazing job, as have others that have come before him, too. And so, the legacy he leaves, you can't help but notice it. And, carrying on that tradition, that's my goal.
When did you hear, or your people hear from Michigan prior to you taking this job? Did Michigan ever reach out to you about the possibility of replacing Jim Harbaugh?
No. This was all about Alabama here, and
this is prior to you taking that. I know Michigan had a wish list there of in case Jim was actually going to go back to the NFL. So and your name was on that, from what I was told. So I was curious if they ever reached out to you prior to you taking Alabama.
Yeah, no, that would never have been anything that I've been made aware of. I think, when you think about the timeline of how quickly things happen from a national championship game, and 2 days later, Coach Saban retiring, and the next day an interview, and then hired him. There just wasn't a lot of time for anything. So, it's been a whirlwind, and excited to be the head coach at Alabama.
Yeah, he wasn't going to wait, and Harbaugh was using, I think, what he had at Michigan on the table for the NFL. I don't know how much more money he got out of the Chargers for doing it that way, but the Alabama's not waiting. And these jobs, while they do sometimes come around, this is a job to be taken at the right time. Sure, it's incredibly hard to follow a legend, but to rebuild a program, it takes some time. And what this was, get in here now, Try and save as many of the players from leaving as you can and get as many good recruits in here right now and check the transfer portal and get guys here. This is the state of college football. This is the way it is. And so by waiting, it looks like Michigan's probably going to promote somebody, but the waiting that you do, it kills you. And that's college football these days because there's no rules. There's no timeline. At least the NFL's now got guidelines set up when you can talk to coaches, when you can hire, those sort of things, when you can talk to free agents. You can't. There's a period of time where teams are still have players under contract. It's not college football. You just get in there, get in front of the team as quickly as you can, and make sure that they don't leave. Oh, Jalen Miller, you don't want him to leave. He was good. So that's man. And then this makes me laugh. Colorado admits 11 minor NCAA violations in Deion Sanders' first season per report. All self-reported. What are violations now? Deion Sanders' son had his Rolls Royce booted on the campus of Colorado. What are the rules? What are the rule violations? There aren't any. Here are some of the rule violations. In December 2022, Deion Sanders' social team posted an image depicting a spreadsheet of unsigned recruits. The post was deleted after 10 minutes. Same month, the high school coach sent Colorado staff a transcript for a player that had not yet entered the transfer portal. Colorado quickly stopped recruiting the player per the report. Sanders posted an Instagram video depicting voluntary team workouts in January 2023. The short clip was live for about 20 minutes before being deleted. This is all social media stuff. Linebackers coach Andre Hart took a picture with a recruit who posted it to social media prior to the first permissible date to have an in-person contact. Really? Just one thing after another. It's just a Sanders Instagram live session held in May added a recruit identified by USA Today's as Aaron Butler as a featured participant. Butler would commit to Colorado, later flipped to Texas. Yeah, they can do that too. That doesn't matter where you commit to. You go someplace else. Players who are not active members of the transfer portal attended a Colorado camp open to high school and transfer recruits last May. The violation led to a 2-week recruiting ban in June. So what's going to happen? How are they going to be hit with this? Are they going to suspend Deion for a game or two? Nah, probably not. It's just the wild, wild west of college football. And to me, when you talk about violations, it's laughable. Now, this is a serious one, and this is one that was probably inevitable, and I'll bet you this is the tip of the iceberg. New England Patriots wide receiver Kayshon Boutte was arrested in Baton Rouge on charges pertaining to illegal online gambling, accused of creating an alias that claimed he was 21 or older to illegally bet on sports games while he was underage and attending LSU. The investigation is ongoing. Between April 6, 2022 and May 7th of 2023, Boutte, who was 20 at the time, allegedly placed over 8,900 bets. 8,900 bets! Of those wagers, at least 17 were on NCAA games, and 6 of the 17 were on LSU football games. Now, he's now in the NFL. So what does the NCAA do? Do they really punish LSU? Well, listen to this. LSU officials revealed they found out about Boutte's illegal gambling last July. So going into the season, they knew about this. In July of 2023, LSU was made aware of the allegations regarding a former student athlete's, stop using that term, please, a former student athlete's improper conduct related to sports gambling while he enrolled at the university. This is an LSU statement. Since then, we have fully cooperated with all relevant authorities involved in the investigation and will continue to do so. We have no evidence that any other student athletes participated in these prohibitive activities. Oh, yeah, you better say that. You better be sure. But chances of that seem slim. And we are grateful for measures that detect and discourage sports gambling-related misconduct. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. They're telling you to bet all the time. All the time. And look, we run commercials on this station. I have done gambling ads. I do it. I understand it. But this is the collateral damage that comes along with it. Now, as for the NCAA and the NFL, What's the connection there? The NFL released the following statement on Boutte. We are aware of the matter and will have no further comment at this time. What do they do? Did they suspend him from the NFL for something that he did while he was in college? He didn't bet on the Patriots, as far as we know. He bet on LSU. Again, the wild, wild west. And what's it going to lead to? I don't know. But it's not sustainable. It can't operate this way. You can't continue to do it this way. And examples of big-time program. Coach, got to get in there. Got to make sure those guys don't leave. Better do that. Get there today. Pack a bag. Leave your family behind. Get going. Move. And now we have players betting on games and minor violations. One other thing before we get to Ravens preview. Luka Doncic has apologized. I thought this was an overreaction. They were playing the Suns. Mavericks were the other night, and he was getting heckled by a fan, which was, certainly within bounds. The fan is yelling, Luka, you're tired. Get your ass on a treadmill. I don't think that's something that you shouldn't be allowed to say. The fan was removed from the game at Luka's request. He said to security, please get him to leave. The fan didn't put up a fight, and he walked out of the American Airlines Center. Now Luka has apologized for this. He said, it was the whole game a little bit, but I was really frustrated that we were losing. I twisted my ankle in the first half, a lot of emotions. Probably shouldn't have done that. When I'm wrong, I admit it, so probably shouldn't have done that, but it was just the whole game going on. Well, good for him for doing that. He did have 34 points, but the Mavericks were blown out 132-109, third straight loss, fifth in their last 7 games. So, yes, I thought that it was much to do about nothing to have the fan kicked out. I mean, I thought that was actually funny. That's something that you would say to Luka Doncic. Get your ass on a treadmill. He shouldn't be tired. He shouldn't. Really, the fact that he's this good and he looks like that, it's, I don't know how much it hurts his game, but I would think it does. I would think that if he were in tip-top shape, how much better he would be. Guys get to the NBA and they realize this. Adrian Dantley, one of the really great 6'5" inside players in the history of the game, and is in the Basketball Hall of Fame, played at DeMatha, played at Notre Dame, and played in the NBA with Detroit and Utah and several teams. He was heavy when he got in the league, and he got himself in spectacular shape. And I know him a little bit now. He's in his late 60s, still in great shape. And he understood that. Charles Barkley, when he got to the NBA, round mound of rebound. And Moses Malone said, you're not going to make it in this league unless you get in shape. And he did. So, if that makes you sensitive to the point where you ask that the patron be asked to leave, then shame on you. But I do applaud this, that you had the class to say, yep, I was wrong, shouldn't have done that, I apologize. I hope he does something nice for the fan. I hope he does, I don't know if he sending a Mavericks gear or something like that. He's a Suns fan, would make him happy. But, I do like it when somebody says, yep, I screwed up. It's on me. My fault. Shouldn't have done that.